Dave. But we're going to move on to Dave Bertoni from Levisons. Levisons is a very interesting platform with regards to collecting data and bed sore treatment. So I'm going to let Dave jump in. We're running a poll right now, and then we'll stop the poll in about 5 minutes. So Dave, introduce yourself.
Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Bertoni, and I'm the CEO of Levisons and one of the founders. Let me just share my screen. I think I'll get this to work. That's probably better. That one. Is that working? Everybody see it? Hello?
Sorry about that. Looks good. Looks good. Thanks so much.
Good. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So again, my name is Dave Bertoni. I'm a CEO, co-founder of Levisons Medical. And I'd like to thank you to Marty for the opportunity to present today. What I want to tell you about is we believe this gives you've got a very interesting opportunity. It's a large market. What we're addressing is the problem of bed sores. And I'll make it really simple. $23 billion is spent a year on the treatment and prevention of bed sores. And the payers, or that is the insurers and lawyers, believe that they are avoidable. So when the 1 million events happen in a hospital every single year, the insurance companies won't pay and the lawyers sue. So here you have $23 billion being spent on something that a lot of the world believes is avoidable. So Levisons has developed a bed system with an instrumented surface and a controlled logic. Caregiver gets to set the desired tissue interface pressure, which is really important. Remember, a bed sore or a pressure injury comes out of pressures. The system scans the patient's form, and it scans the position and movements every fraction of a second. And the controller adjusts the surface to the desired pressures. The machine vision of the patient is displayed at the bedside or at a nurse's station or somewhere else. So, the Levisons kind of sits right at the center of the most important elements or let's say nouveautés in, just put that down. Sorry, I have something on my screen I have to get rid of here. That's the poll, okay. So sits at the center of what's new in healthcare today, and that is telehealth, gathering unique patient information, and being able to deliver treatment at a distance. So about the market itself, it's a very large market, and we're talking about therapeutic beds. It's about a $4 billion market. Integrated bed sales, which is what we would be, is about $1 billion market. Our technology has been de-risked to the point where we have a core patent on the technology. It's lab verified. We're right now in the process of building an alpha model that will be placed into a facility in the next 3 to 6 months. All of these processes are right in, they're consistent with the treatment protocols today. And we're raising $5 million Series A at a $10 million pre. We believe it's going to be our last raise to get us to either a liquidity event or to a market introduction. And to date, we've been extremely capital efficient. We've done a round of 1.5 million, which is pretty much a management raise. So as I said, the payers and the insurance companies believe that these are avoidables, that anybody who's in a hospital environment should never get a pressure ulcer. Same thing as falling down in a hospital. Well, even though they may think that, you can see the pressure ulcers have a real, it's an intractable problem, one that the healthcare facilities are having a real difficulty getting through. So they have to report them. When they're reported, either Medicare or the payers will ding them if they're in the high percentage categories. So I said this was a costly. This is a top of mind issue for the hospital administrators, and why is that? Because if you just take a 160 bed hospital, the average 160 bed hospital loses $6 million in losses. That is unreimbursed services because the insurers won't pay. 911 days of unreimbursed added length of stay and 16 deaths attributed to, again, avoidable bed sores. So they're very common in the United States. There's about 2.5 million, 60,000 deaths a year, which is about equivalent to our opioid crisis. And it's increasing every year. So it's America's #2 hospital-acquired condition, and it's one of the most litigated injuries in the United States. An average settlement is $250,000, and 87% of the times they're finding in favor of the plaintiff. There's another group that's extremely important here, and that is the spinal cord injury group. There are about 300,000 spinal cord patients in the United States, and they develop a pressure ulcer. 13 of them develop a pressure injury every single year. 9% of them develop a pressure injury every other year. These things get very serious very quickly to grade 3 and 4, which cost about $75,000 to $100,000 each event. And why are they at such risk? Because they have a lack of mobility and a lack of sense or feeling in the places where the pressure injuries develop. The largest healthcare provider in the world for spinal cord injury patients is the Veterans Administration. They're extremely concerned about this, and the reason is that they're responsible for the healthcare of their veterans from end to end. That is, from hospitalization to a nursing home to home health care. So all of the costs are they're responsible for. So we're addressing one of the most urgent market challenges, that is the preventable hospital condition, liabilities, and Veterans Affairs. And we do it with active pressure management, as I talked about. We also have compliance recording, meaning that all of the data that is gathered is collected, it's there, and we can show that you've complied with whatever the practices are, and it's affordable and reimbursable. So let me just talk a minute about what a pressure ulcer is and how it happens. If you stay in one spot, don't move, and your skin is exposed to a pressure of 32 millimeters of mercury of pressure or greater for an extended period, you get cell death. That's what happens. If we do a thing called pressure mapping, and this is a pressure map on a standard hospital bed, wherever you see red, that's over 100 millimeters of pressure, okay? If you were to maintain that spot and not move, you would get a pressure ulcer. That's why the policies in a hospital are that you have to be repositioned at least every 2 hours. So it's extremely expensive to deal with somebody who's at high risk of pressure ulcers. Once you have a pressure ulcer, the recovery time is generally 3 months. So you'll be in acute care until that wound begins to stabilize, then skilled nursing, and then home health care. So the solution is 2 concepts. One's called immersion, the other one's envelopment. Envelopment means how well does the surface conform to the body or mold to the body. And immersion is how deeply you go into the surface. So our system is built on this. We've got a thing called a rolling diaphragm. It's filled with air, and we fill it with whatever pressure we desire. In this case, in this demonstration, we filled it with 32 millimeters of pressure. And when you press on the device, you'll notice it doesn't work like a balloon. It doesn't expand. It doesn't get pushed back more. It can only push back with the amount of pressure that we fill it with, and then it rolls away from the body. There are hundreds, there's 416 cells on our bed. They're independent and they conform to the smallest contours of the body. We can sink a person up to 5 inches deep into the surface, and that gives you more surface area to cradle the body. So, you know, there are a lot of other beds out on the on the market that are therapeutic beds, but because of the fact that the hospitals and we're unable to control the pressure injury problem, they just seem to be inadequate. They're all based on a very similar system, and that is like laying on a raft that you might find in a pool. So what do? With each one of our cells, we put a height sensor and a pressure sensor and a valve in every single one of our 400 cells. Every cell, every individual cell is sending signals to our processor, and the processor can regulate each one of the cells individually. We can individually program a cell to take any pressure we'd like, and I'll show you a quick video of that. Shut off the sound. So what we're going to see is a person laying down on our surface, and you'll see two different sides of the, oops, sorry here, slight technical issue. You'll see two sides. One display side is the pressure, one display side is the height of every cell. What we've done right now is we've told the control algorithm to keep the pressure at 26 millimeters of pressure. That's very light, well below the threshold of 32. And now as this person moves around on the bed, they're just moving, he's going to turn from his back to his side. What you see is that within 6 or 7 seconds, the pressure goes back to 26 millimeters of pressure after the person has stopped moving. Now he's going to return, roll over onto his back again, and you'll see as the movement is happening, the pressures change. The system's aware of those pressures, and after he stops moving, the pressure is returned to 26 millimeters of pressure. And again, you'll see him roll to his right side this time. And each one of those times, we can tell what position that patient is in. So we're getting a reading of all of these different cell pressures and positions every 500 milliseconds. So what did you just see? What you saw is a demonstration of our active intelligence pressure management. The value of the patient and the caregiver and the institution is that it reduces the risk of human error. The pressure mapping is continuously displayed either locally or in a remote location. In fact, the surface can be controlled from a remote location, and that's why we talk about our ability to do telehealth. The data is stored for verification and care compliance in case of litigation. So so we can see the patient has been moved and they're moving and the pressure never went above a certain area. The patient movement data is increasingly used for alerts and general health indicators as well. The opportunities for the utility of this data has yet to be explored. So no matter how great the clinical benefits are, if a bed requires a lot of training, it won't be used. We know that. So the active intelligence technology works very well, as we say. We call it under the covers, and we simplify the interface to make it very easy for the least skilled assistant to access all the technical features. So it's just one touch on each one of these. You select the kind of comfort you'd like, and that includes flotation. So flotation is one of the important elements. So we've got two parts of the bed that I think are really unique. One is that we can take the bed from being extremely supportive and conforming to the patient's body And with one touch, we go to what we call a mobility cycle that lifts the patient out of the bed so it's not on a nice firm surface and allows for really easy patient handling, or for an independent patient to get back his mobility. This is where most of the injuries happen, not only to the patient, but the caregiver when they're trying to move them in a very soft surface. Absolutely unique for Levisense is our ability to create a void any place and of any size in the surface. So what we're seeing here on the slide is if the wound were right there and you wanted to completely float it, take all of the pressure off it, either for comfort or for clinical means, all you have to do is push down on the surface, hold it, and the cells will stay depressed until you go back to a mobility setting. So any size, any shape, in any place in the bed, you can create a cavity to float the surface. No one else can do that. So unique to our bed is the ability to get active intelligent pressure management, personalization, data collection, remote control, and monitoring. So regulatory requirements for us and hurdles are very low. This is a class 2 510K exempt. It only requires FDA registration, and we use an equivalence or a predicate device as a alternating pressure bed. Very simple for us to measure this in our labs and pass. Standard engineering approvals are typical, like UL, to make sure that it's electrically safe. And current IP status is we have a number of US international patents and patents pending, as well as trade secrets. So our commercial entry point, this is, I think, really interesting for us to de-risk this project. One of the things we did is we're going in, our commercial entry point is rental. We wish to replace this technology called air fluidized therapy. It was developed in the 1970s. It's remained relatively unchanged over all that time. And it's generally really disliked by the clinical staff and the patients because of its difficulty of use. In fact, it's so difficult to use that it's only available at rental. Why is that? Because you need a company technician to keep the system working for you. Our system is about 1/3 the cost of ownership for a care facility.